Sunday evenings is Ash and mine date night. And we've been doing this for almost a decade now. Sunday night, I mean, we do at least 48 Sunday nights out of 52 every year that we have date night. We're really good about it. And we take turns. So this past Sunday, it was Ash's turn. It was about, in the evening, it was about minus 22, and she goes, let's go swimming. And I'm thinking, swimming? What? And I'm thinking about the wet hair and the cold water. And I'm the guy who just yesterday with Wayne, we're out at Elk Island and it's minus 22 and we're hiking out there. And still I was like, swimming. But it was her turn to pick. And so we went and we had a great time. The water was heated. They had a steam room. They had a sauna room and they had a whirlpool. And so we were going back and forth between all of them. We had a great time that I would have missed if I would have made some sort of stance about, I ain't going swimming. That sounds crazy. I'm not doing that. And so that's what happens, right? Sometimes you get stuck in that your head about what's logical, what's reasonable, and you miss out on the awe. You miss out on the wonderful. Because the wonderful is never in the reasonable. The okay is in the reasonable. It's going to be all right is in the reasonable. But that ain't where the wonderful is, right? And so that led me thinking about, this week I've thought a lot about diversity and shared leadership. These are two things that have been very present for me this week with everything going on at the center and in the world and this and that and how we are with each other. And diversity is a really interesting thing. I had a call today. There was a class offered by the Home Office on diversity, and I was in one of the first ones, and they have me on the list for students to call to interview about diversity. And my thoughts on it have changed over the decade, and here's where I'm at with it now. That without a willingness to have a diversity of ideas, any other kind of diversity is not going to work. If we're really stuck on this is the way it is, and everybody needs to get into lockstep with this, or they're not patriotic, or they're not politically correct, or they're not this, or they're not that, well, then any other kind of diversity we're working towards is not going to show up in form because we haven't gotten to it in mind. We haven't gotten to it in heart. So diversity in thought comes first. And so that's what I told this woman, and as it was coming out of my mouth, I was going, wow, that's actually pretty good. I'm going to use that on Sunday. And that got me thinking about shared leadership, and that's something we do here, and it's really important here. You know, it's right in there with our mission statement that we are a shared leadership organization. And that got me thinking about, well, what is shared leadership really? Because we have a definition for it here, but we're still playing around with it, and there's a lot of different ideas as to what shared leadership is. And so I wanted to explore that this week in the realm of diversity. And the first thing I came up with was, well, marriage is a shared leadership situation. Yeah, got that right. So I thought, I've been married 4 times. And so I started looking at shared leadership through the eyes of each marriage. Now, my first marriage, we were both very young, and there really was not a leader. I mean, I took a workshop back then where they told me I was a space general, not a space cadet. So I tried to lead it, but I didn't really know what I was doing, and she didn't know what she was doing, and so it was a mess, right? Because there was no leadership, and we weren't going anywhere, and it only lasted 2 years, and that was that. My second marriage, I was the leader. We did what I said we were doing. We marched through that marriage for about 12 years, very unhappily. And I kept thinking, I can fix this. And so we kept doing different things, and she'd come up with ideas and said, I got this. I got this. And I was divorced. My third marriage, I married somebody who was just as strong as I was, but we had no idea how to get along under shared leadership, and so we fought it out for 12 years. We fought it out. I mean, it was just this one round after the next of battle about everything. Neither of us giving ground all the time. But we were both stubborn as hell about we're going to make this work. And so we were in there for 12 years. That was not fun. That was not a life of expansion. And so after that one, that's when I went into the cabin for 2 years. I'm in this cabin realizing I need to change. This isn't about the people I'm with. I've been divorced now 3 times. This is clearly about me. I need to change. And so one of the things I realized in there is that, boy, I think I'm right a lot. And I think that gets in the way of having a good relationship. Being right, even if I am, right? It actually, even if you are right a lot, so you think you got some real evidence to show for it, I feel like I do. I've got tons of evidence to prove it. I'm right, man. It doesn't work well in a relationship. Anybody who's been divorced knows this. Or is in battle. If you're in a relationship where you feel in battle, the problem is not the other person, it's you. It's me, thinking I'm right all the time. And so I met this incredibly powerful woman who's not going to take any crap from me in terms of saying we're going to do what I want to do. And so we have the honeymoon period that every relationship has, and then all of a sudden we're in battle again. We're in battle just like my last one. I'm going, hold on a second, I thought I changed. So we both stepped back. We both took a look at that. We both breathed into what is shared leadership, because we're both leaders, and we want this relationship to work. And that made me think about the center and how, if we're going to shared leadership here, that we need to be focused on that we want the relationship to work. And we have some incredible leaders here, Carol and John, and who remind me all the time, wait a minute, do you want to be right, or do you want to have a relationship here? And I am so grateful for their reminders. Like my wife likes to remind me when I make that stand of being right. Right? So maybe you do some of that in your life. Maybe you make a stance sometimes in your life about this is what's right, this is what needs to happen, and I'm pissed off that nobody gets it. Or am I the only one? You know, this is what we're working with. This is what we're dealing with. If we want the world to transform, is what is our relationship to each other? And that's what came to me, is that shared leadership is a relationship. I remember when I first applied for the job, our very first meeting on Zoom, Tammy and I were teasing each other about how this is our first date. You know, we immediately put it into the realm of relationship. It was great. It was great. how we talked about that, and then we got to the place where, okay, we're going to get married. We're signing this contract. Ash and I are moving up here, and we're going to do this, right? But there was this courting period, and there was this looking at how we talk to each other and how we relate to each other. And it's one of my favorite parts about being here. And even though it's one of my favorite parts, I notice I forget once in a while because I'm so darn right. And so if I'm doing it, I figure maybe some of you might be doing that. Right? Sometimes making being right more important than the relationship. That whether it be with your coworkers or your lover or your kids or your boss. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter because it's all relationships. And I know that some people, I've heard them, I've heard this term decompartmentalize. I don't believe it's an actual thing, though everybody loves to talk about it. I behaved this way, this there. We're actually watching this show on TV called Severed, which they do something to the person's brain so that they're actually two different people, one at work and one at home. Like this is a thing, right? And it's interesting to watch how that really freaks them out. That at home they have no idea what they do at work, and at work they have no idea what their home life is like. They're completely severed. Well, that's decompartmentalizing. But us as wholeness, one of the things we preach here is wholeness. Wholeness. That makes everything a relationship. And this is what I've been thinking about this week, how this is a relationship. What we have here as a community is a relationship. What we have here as a world is a relationship. And what is our relationship to it? And of course it starts with the people that you're right around. But it grows beyond that. If you're looking at the news and thinking, I would never behave like that. That's crazy. That's something separate from me. No. Because we're in shared leadership in all of it. In the world. We're in shared leadership with everything. So it's beautiful that it's talked about here that way as shared leadership, but in fact, it's really the only way the world transforms. It's the only way we transform. People, particularly in the States, I don't know if it's so much here, but in the States, independence is a huge thing. And in fact, this country was created on it. We want to be independent of, So independence is this huge thing, and it doesn't even exist. We are completely interdependent on each other. There is no such thing as independence. And yet, we raise our kids to be independent instead of the interdependence that actually exists. I was raised to be independent, to be strong-willed, to be able to stand on my own. And that's crazy. And exhausting. It's not just crazy, it's exhausting. You want to get tired out in life? Be independent. And you want to check how independent you are? Hold your breath. Every single organism on this planet is interdependent on everything else. It's called an ecosystem, and we all know this, right? But we don't know it intellectually. Do we take it into our lives? Do we take it into that moment when you need it most, when you're up against somebody who's just so different than you, who has a view that is so opposed to what you believe? How are you then with your independence or your interdependence or your shared leadership? Or your ability to be with that? How are you when it comes to a tough conversation that makes you uncomfortable? Well, I'm uncomfortable, so we can't talk about that. You get to a place where things get a little heated, a little uncomfortable, and people are like, whoa, let's calm down and be reasonable. I go back to my statement. Nothing wonderful ever came out of reasonable. So it takes a little fire. It takes a little heat. It takes a little uncomfortability. And how are we in sitting in that? Can we breathe into ourselves and breathe into the situation and go, okay, I'm a little uncomfortable here, or I'm a lot uncomfortable here, or I don't like this at all. I mean, there's lots of levels of uncomfort, right? And now I go back to the yoga thing, which is move into your stretch and smile. If you can't smile, back off the stretch a little bit. This isn't about pain. It's just about uncomfortable, right? So I'm not asking anybody to breathe into and be with, sometimes we got no choice but to breathe into the pain. I know I've been there. But that's not what I'm talking about today. Today I'm talking about, can you be in the uncomfortability of a conversation of diversity where the views are so opposing what you believe that they make you uncomfortable? Because that's the growing point. That's the growing point. That's where a relationship either comes closer together in bonds or gets further apart. Right there. Not when we're sitting in meditation in the morning, though that's a good thing to do because it's practice. But when we're actually in those conversations, how is it then? How are we doing in that moment? I know for me, I have all kinds, it's a growing practice. Sometimes I get a little heated and my back gets up and all of a sudden I want to prove that I'm right. I'm big on proving I'm right. And I usually got lots of proof, right? But it doesn't help the relationship. And I keep having to remind myself of that, and maybe you do too. Maybe that's the growing edge in where we are in shared leadership, in where we are and how we are with the world. Because truly, this is, every single one of us is in shared leadership on one level or another. There's nobody who isn't, because that's life, since we're interdependent. Now, in your shared leadership, maybe you take a more submissive role, or maybe you take a more aggressive role, or maybe you take whatever role is yours to take. And I would say, find yourself in there. Find your heart in there. And remember that it's okay to be uncomfortable. And it's okay if the other person's uncomfortable. If in these conversations, what you're doing is be the people pleaser, right? If what you're doing is this is getting a little heated, maybe we need to do some meditation here, or we need to cool this out so that everybody's more comfortable again, you just miss the fire. You miss the moment of something wonderful showing up. It's in the fire. Reasonableness never leads to wonderfulness. Only leads to okay. Wonderfulness takes a little fire to, you got to boil water to cook something, right? If you just put water on the stove, and you don't turn the stove on, is anything getting cooked? It takes turning on the fire. It takes turning it up a little bit. A little uncomfortable, If we can get to that place, then something wonderful will arise. Always does, that's the other part of our teaching is trust. Trust. Not always so easy, but it is what's in there when we're in an environment that has a tremendous amount of diversity. And in this world is a tremendous amount of diversity. In our center is a tremendous amount of diversity. So how are we with that? How are we being with the diversity in terms of growing that uniqueness that is each one of yours to bring? How am I being with it? I ask myself that question every day, more and more all the time. How am I being with the diversity that is our center, that is our community, that is our people? And some days I do better with that than others. I'll tell you that, that's what's real. But by having it, but this is how you practice. You bring it forth, you notice it, right? I notice it. I go, oh, I'm not doing so well with this today. I need to take some time to breathe. Maybe go out to Elk Island and walk around in the snow for a while. Whatever. Or I'm going to sit and I'm going to just be with this. And so that's what I do. I'm asking, what do you do when you're heated? What do you do when the situation feels uncomfortable? Are you quick to want to turn down the flame? Or can you breathe into, oh, this is a little uncomfortable now. That means we're getting somewhere. That means we're actually getting somewhere. And so when Ash and I, we disagree, and we're both very hard-headed, soft-hearted people, right? So we disagree a lot. And then we sit with that. Maybe we argue a little bit, but then we sit with it. And we've come to trust in our process so much that we know we're going to come to something that's wonderful to do. And that's what it was. Swimming was wonderful. I would have never thought that on a minus 22-degree day. But you don't know if if you're not willing to be in there with it. I could have missed that, but I didn't. And I'm so happy about that. I keep getting asked, the home office is approaching me now because our center's growing. I'm being approached and being asked to do things with home office and stuff that some of it feels very uncomfortable to me. But I see it as mine to do, and so I'm breathing into my own uncomfortability around how we express what it is we're doing. How do we take these teachings, not just for here on Sunday, but bring it out to the world, right? Because that's ultimately what we want. We come here to remind ourselves of the truth that we are powerful, creative, spiritual beings. We come here to learn some tools that will help us remember that in the outside world, and then we go out and interact with the outside world where we're the ones with the tools, maybe not the person we're talking with. And in that situation, we get to rise. We get to be more. We get to show that there's something else, other possibilities here. There's something larger going on that we all get to have. We all get to experience from this place of trust and love, compassion, kindness, and knowing that we are in an interdependent relationship with everything. Shared leadership is actually all that exists, whether we recognize it or not. And the more we can see it, the more we can be with it, the more it can grow, the more it can become something absolutely extraordinary. Diversity, that's the key to all of it. So let's be there with that. Let's be in that place of, I can be with views that are so different from mine. I can be with people who are so different from me. And yet I can be with them because I trust that there's something wonderful coming here. I know it for each and every one of us here. Thank you. I love you.